as tensions were rising between these two superpowers, after a United States Navy ship was allegedly sunk by the Kingdom of Spain. On April 19, 1898, President William McKinley threatened the Kingdom of Spain over Cuba. And a couple of days later, the U.S. Congress officially declared war on the Kingdom of Spain. And thus began the Spanish-American War. The U.S. started taking over many Spanish colonies. And since the Philippines was one of the colonies, the Asiatic Squadron of the United States Navy was sent to the Philippines. And after a battle at Manila Bay between Spanish and American forces that lasted for a few hours, the U.S. had Manila under control. And about a month later, revolutionary leader Emilio was invited back to the Philippines by the U.S. He immediately took command of the Filipino forces. And many Filipino men left local Spanish army units to join his force. Philippine Revolution against Spain officially resumed, and in less than a month, they had already freed much of the country from Spain. On June 12, 1898, Emilio issued the Philippine Declaration of Independence. He then established a revolutionary government, naming himself as president, and created First Philippine Republic. However, on this side of the world, negotiations were going on between Spain and America, to end the Spanish-American War. And by the end of the year, the Treaty of Paris was signed, ending the Spanish-American War, and selling the Philippines and other Spanish colonies to the United States for $20 million. With this treaty, Spanish rule in the Philippines formally ended, and unfortunately paved the way for another colonization. President William McKinley issued a colonization policy and called it benevolent assimilation.
They used this to justify the colonization of the Philippines by arguing that this was a different kind of colonialism and imperialism. This was a good kind of colonialism that would bring education, infrastructure, and public health.
Filipinos disagreed with this policy, and didn't want to be colonized by the U.S., so they decided to fight.
For years they had fought the Spanish. Now they were prepared to fight the Americans, if they had to.
For the United States to maintain this empire, what the United States had to do was to use force and to project that force across thousands and thousands of miles. We had never done that.
The war lasted for 3 years, and resulted in the death of 4,200 Americans, 20,000 Filipino combatants, dissolution of the First Philippine Republic, and the occupation of the Philippines. The Americans established the insular government of the Philippine Island, as a territorial government of the United States. The 1902 Philippine Organic Act was passed by Congress as the Constitution of the Philippines, which authorized the U.S. President to appoint Governor General and 2 Filipino resident commissioners to represent the Philippines in the U.S. Congress. Americans got to work and started transforming the nation.
Dock at Pier 7, a new double-decked concrete structure 1,000 feet long, built and maintained by the Philippine government. Escolta, the principal retail street of American Manila, lined with banks, theaters, and drugstores. Not chemist shops, but drugstores, with ice cream, sodas, postcards, and pay telephones.
Filipinos still didn't give up their fight to gain independence. These are representatives from the Philippine Independence Mission, who were lobbying for the independence of the Philippines. And by 1916, the Philippine Autonomy Act was passed by the United States Congress. It replaced the Philippine Organic Act of 1902. The act contained the first formal and official declaration of the United States commitment to give independence to the Philippines. And 18 years later, the Philippine Independence Act was signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, as United States federal law that established the process for the Philippines to become an independent country. Under this act, the Commonwealth of the Philippines was established, with the first directly elected president of the Philippines. Because of World War II, the independence was delayed for 2 years, but it was eventually given in 1946.
I am authorized and directed by the President of the United States to proclaim the independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.